All right, you're listening to the Palestine in America podcast with me, Editor-in-Chief Nader Ihmoud, joined by Sam'an Ashrawi, our guest editor in the music edition. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Thanks for having me.
My dude. Palestine America was blessed when you agreed to just do the letter to the editor and do some edits. And that was way back in June. And we're here in now September, and we're about to publish a great issue, in my opinion. So what made you decide in the beginning to say, you know what, this is something that I might want to do? And then what inspired the letter?
I think that first of all, it's really important what y'all represent in terms of us being able to tell our own stories. That's really cool. You know, I've gotten to write about my identity when I've been published other places, but being able to do it for a magazine that is about our identity is, I think, really, really important. And then also it being the music issue, it's like a perfect circle of my interests. And that, I think what you mentioned, like it was originally just a letter from the editor and editing some stuff. And I think for me, the thing was that I've had so many, like, I guess I would say, like, I don't, a bucket list maybe is the right word, maybe it's the wrong word. Like I've just always, there's always so many things I've wanted to write about the intersection of like Palestinian culture and music. And all of those didn't get to pan out necessarily in this issue, but it felt, and there were also things that I discovered in writing this issue that I didn't know were going to be bucket list things for me. So that was also really cool too. So I think that's kind of how it blossomed. Was I was just like, oh no, there's so many cool music things that we can do related to who we are.
And when people pick up the issue, they'll see that you're all over this issue, and you found some great stories that we'll get into. But I want to touch on the letter from the editor a little bit, because I definitely related to some of the things that you wrote there. I remember stealing my brother's PSP, and he had all his like, you know, what my mom used to call gangster rap on there, you know, like, and I would steal his MP3 player, and he would like come home from school being like, dude, where's my CD player? And I had it, you know, and I was listening to his Biggie tapes and his Jay-Z tapes. And so when you were talking about your cousin and everything, I was like, I got my memories, and I hope people read that and kind of go, they remember when they got introduced to the music they love. You know?
Yeah, I think it sounds like, you know, for me, my cousin was like my brother essentially, which I didn't get to have a brother growing up. So he was my guy, my cousin Yazin. And it sounds like we had a really similar experience. That's always what I trace it back to in terms of like obviously my parents, which I touched on in the letter, had a big impact on my love for music. But in terms of music of my generation, of our generation, it was definitely my cousin Yazin. And I think it was definitely one of those things where he probably didn't realize how impactful it was when it was all happening. He was just being the older cousin. You know what I mean? He was just playing that role very well. And I mean, it definitely is a huge part of the reason why I am who I am today.
1,000%. My older cousin introduced me to LimeWire, and then introduced me to, you know, like, I didn't know how my brother was getting all his music. You know, my cousin showed me how to do my own research. You know, like, so that was cool too. Like when you talked about your cousin, I thought about my cousin. Mm-hmm. So that was awesome.
Ironically, I was actually the one who told my older cousin about LimeWire, because I discovered it in my own time. And I was like, yo, man, I found all these like albums that you like, these artists that you like. I can
do the super cool younger
like
cousin.
Christmas if you want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For sure. So I can't wait for people to read about that and get more on that. But the next one of the stories that I want to touch on too is the cover story about Gibi Dejani, a punk rocker, and just kind of tell the people how you stumbled upon this story and give them just a little taste of what they're going to get to read.
Yeah, it's kind of I think there are certain stories that you do as a writer that um like if you've ever read The Alchemist, it's like certain things are just like written, they're in the cards for you. It's fate, it's God, like whatever you believe in. And to me, this story is one of those things because I didn't set out to do, as you know, I didn't set out to do
Right. It
this
was just a
story when you
couple. It
first
was
reached
just,
out to me.
yeah, it was just the letter from the editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, the way it happened, it's all a mix of like crazy coincidences and luck and fate and all this stuff. Um, I am a huge fan of the Beastie Boys. They're my favorite group of all time, like any genre. Have all the albums, have a bunch of shirts. I've watched every interview, whatever. They're like the only group that I really like will fan out for. Um, and part of that is because they were like one of the few artists who like spoke up for Arabs and Muslims pre and post 9/11. And so I think for me it was like it was like I had this huge respect for who they were outside of them
I
making
didn't even
music.
know that.
Yeah, they like made speeches about, like they gave a speech at the MTV Awards in like the late '90s, um, saying something. It'll be in the article. And then after 9/11, they went on MTV again, like in the days after 9/11, and they're like, we want to tell our fans, everyone in New York, people around the world, like this is not a time, or there's never a time to be racist or prejudiced against Arabs and Muslims. Like this is whether or not that's who is behind this terrible thing. This is no reason to treat people poorly because of where they come from, right? Um, so anyway, so because of that, I follow all their stuff online. One of the guys from the Beastie Boys, Adam Horvitz, who goes by Adrock when he's rapping, I'd been following for a while, and maybe a couple years ago, I remember him tweeting like at the Twitter handle was caught off base, but I clicked on it and it said the person's name was Nadia Dejani. And I was like, I freaked out because, first of all, obviously Dejani, definitely Palestinian name.
Yeah.
But secondly, because I have a cousin named Nadia Dejani. And so I was like, wait, does Hadrock from the Beastie Boys know my cousin? But I never knew about this. Like, what, like,
Yeah.
what's, like, why wouldn't she tell me that? It seems like an important detail. So then I did a little more like investigative research on Google and found out that no, there's an actress named Nadia Dejani, and she's best friends with Adam from the Beastie Boys. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I followed her. I was like, you know, assuming she's Palestinian, never didn't know her at all, and she's like definitely more famous than I am. So I didn't like reach out to her. I didn't like say anything to her, nothing. Just followed her to keep up with the Palestinian. It's what I do. I feel like it's what a lot of us do is like if we
Yeah.
find out about a famous Palestinian,
Yeah. I
we
pretty much
subscribe.
made Palestine America so I wouldn't seem like a creep following up.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, so that was the start, and then sadly, her brother passed away at the end of last year, and so I saw her posting about him online, and it started with pictures. I saw pictures of him, like in a band. I saw pick him like in like a recording studio, and I was like, okay, there's like this Arab dude in like music settings. This seems like something I need to be aware of, a story that I need to be aware of. And this was beginning of this year. So I kind of made a note of that. But again, I didn't know for sure if they were Palestinian.
Right.
And then when you reached out to me, I just sent her. She had an email like in her Instagram bio, and I was like, just gonna shoot my shot, see what happens. So I emailed her. I was like, hey, like I got asked to edit this Palestinian magazine. It's a music thing. I just wanted to know if your family is Palestinian, because if your family is Palestinian, I, I would really love to do certain in music. I don't know exactly what that is, but I'd like to find out. She emailed me back and she was like, yeah, we are Palestinian. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So
Cool.
that's how it started, and then it became this big thing.
So
So
what's one piece of the article about Gibi, after people are done reading your article, you want them to take away about this awesome guy?
you know, the surface level thing is that I'm pretty sure he was the first Palestinian to have some kind of like impactful or influential role in music culture in America. But I think the deeper takeaway is, which I've already noticed in my own life, is how much of like a supportive and motivating and encouraging friend he was to all these people I've talked to. Now, the people that he motivated and encouraged ended up being like some of the most influential musicians of the 80s. But still, I think it's a lesson that you can take home, that, you know, if you do have a friend who is doing something artistic, that encouragement and that motivation and positivity goes a long way. And it's something I've already started doing. Like I've already, like, my friends will send me music they're working on or whatever, and I've already tried to like consciously be more like encouraging and supportive and
Yeah, no,
motivating.
from just editing and reading it, he seemed like a supportive guy that just he was always in the right place at the right time,
That too.
but he was in the right place at the right time because of the person he was. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it was that supportive
Exactly.
nature that he had that put him, and that put him there.
Yep.
And you definitely felt like in the stories you were telling, you felt the Palestinian charisma in him. You know,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
I don't give a f attitude, just you know,
That's definitely us.
you know. Well, I
Yes.
really can't wait for people to read that article.
Same.
That was not even when we set out on this journey. It wasn't even set out that that was going to be our cover story, but because of
Right.
what you unraveled, it just had to be, and it was perfect. And I can't
Yeah.
wait for people to read that. Something else you stumbled upon was a crazy story about how uh, there was a Palestinian singer on a Coldplay song,
Yeah.
and uh, I don't know how you came. I forgot what, like. I just remember seeing the excitement in your eyes when you were telling me about it, and you were like, "Hey, I'm still piecing this thing together." So tell people about the Coldplay song and about the beautiful Palestinian singer who, I think, didn't he say she had a voice of like an angel or something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. This one, really, the real reason this came together is because I got to meet um, Chris Martin from Coldplay back in January during the Grammys, um, uh, working on another story, and I had seen him. I had seen the guys from Dem, Tamer and Mahmoud, post a picture with Chris Martin in Rawabi, like in the fall of 2019,
yeah,
and so I was like, okay, I can't believe I'm like in the same space as Chris Martin. I'm definitely going to ask him about it for sure. So I asked him about it. He went on this like, he told me like he said, he's like, I can give you 5 minutes of my time, and he gave me a lot more than 5 minutes. So he told me this long story about how it all came together, and then he and his manager invited me to Coldplay's concert that night at the Palladium in LA, and there was like a huge Palestinian delegation like in the VIP section, and I was like, this is crazy. Why are a bunch of Palestinians
yeah,
at a Coldplay show? I mean, I know like obviously people like their music, but like it
yeah.
seems
Well, a
more
whole
than that.
occasion. What's going on?
Yeah, and sure enough, like at the show, this woman gets on stage and sings a song with them. It's one of the first songs called "Church," and I turned to like one of the Palestinian people who were there. I was like, "What's going on?" His name is Abid, and he basically like kind of told me like a really short version of the story, and basically told me like, yeah, like Coldplay has not just, her name is Nora Shakur, not just her, but there's also like another Palestinian band that plays on the album. I can't remember now what song. I think it's Arabesque is the name of the song. So I was just like fascinated that this happened. Again, because like anytime, I feel like anytime we have some kind of connection to something that's happening like in mainstream culture, it feels like a big deal, because like so much of what we get from the media we consume is like trying to like erase or like diminish our identity.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So when stuff like this happens, I think it's really important and significant. And so I asked Chris about it after the show, Chris Martin, and he told me his version of the story, and I was like, wow. And I got to very briefly meet Nora, but we didn't have a long conversation. So then time went on. Then this opportunity came with y'all with PIA, and so I reached out to Nora, and I reached out to Chris Martin's manager, and I said, hey, like, I would love to tell people the story of how this song like happened, how this came together. And to Chris Martin's credit, which he like Coldplay and Chris Martin, they're like, you know, one of the biggest pop acts in the world. Like they're like one of the biggest bands.
1000%.
They could easily be like, sorry, we don't have time. You know what I mean? Easily. Yeah. We've definitely gotten stiff-armed by people much less famous than Chris Martin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, during this whole process, we've got stiff-armed.
Yes. Yeah. But to their credit, like his manager was like very encouraging and supportive, and he was like, "Yes, this is a great idea." And here's something I don't think I told you, is that when I reached out, Chris Martin was on vacation, so he wasn't doing any press.
No, you didn't say it.
Yeah, so he still did it for us anyway, which is really, really nice of him. So it's Chris and Nora telling the story of how this collaboration came together. And I definitely want to tell, you know, whoever might be watching this, that the way you should experience this is you should watch the live performance that Coldplay did in Amman, because it's I've cried to it like multiple times, but it's one of the most beautiful things. And the first voice and person that you see in this video that's not Coldplay is Nora. She's like the first person that comes up and like christens the performance. It's a beautiful story of how it all came together. Again, we won't spoil it, but it's amazing.
Oh, 1000%. They definitely have to pick up an issue and read the entire story, because it's just crazy how by chance things came to be. And the same way, I won't give away the story, but the same way Chris Martin showed us generosity, he showed Nora generosity, and they'll read about it. But like,
it's beautiful.
So far, all I know about him is he's a good guy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, very selfless. Very. He did this for us on vacation. Chris, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Damn, but we got Coldplay in PIA. That's major, and that's a major shout out to you. And later on in this interview, before we finish up talking about everything, we got to make sure to give you a special shout out and give you your flowers.
Thanks, man.
For everything that you do for us. But before we get into that, the next thing I want to get into, and it kind of like the shifting into this is kind of goes with what you were saying about how anytime something happens, including us, into the mainstream culture, it's kind of a big deal. This didn't have anything to do directly with Palestinians, but when Drake dropped his Arab verse, and you know, you did your whole breakdown of it on IG, and people should definitely go check that out. And I think we're going to have a graphic of it in the issue. Mm-hmm. But you saw that Suhail from Dem had posted a nice little analysis about it, and we're going to publish that. And can you kind of just speak to what that was about, and how and why we chose to publish that in this issue?
Yeah, I think this is probably the most like timely piece in the whole issue, and I think that was a big part of it. But also it was because it was such a spectacle, like Drake rapping in Arabic, like, you know what I mean? That's incredible. And then so there's two pieces of this, and Suhail really touches on, like you said, the significance of it. He talks about the film by Jackie Ream, who did Planet of the Arabs, I think.
Planet of the
Arabs, which is like a short film. It's like an art film, but basically it compiles all the negative stereotypes of Arabs that have been in movies over the last century, and then it backs it up with research by Dr. Jack Shaheen, who says that like he analyzed 1,000 films, which sounds like an incredible, like a huge undertaking. And I think he found like 7 positive portrayals of Arabs or something like that,
Yeah,
which is,
it was something crazy.
it's like, so it's so it really shows you, you know, at a certain point, it's like, it's more than just one or two like villain characters, and it becomes, this is a stereotype that Hollywood is perpetuating. And so what Suhail is trying to say in this article that he wrote is, that Drake doing this probably means more than Drake knows. And specifically with the Gaza shout out, which one person we didn't get, but we were so close. I almost got Popcan to do an interview for this, to break it down. But basically, part of this is that there is a hood in Jamaica called Gaza, and that hood became known as Gaza because of what's happening back home. This town is originally called Portmore, and this dancehall artist named Vibes Cartel, you know, I would love to talk to him to really get the full story, but basically saw what was happening over there, back home, and said, wow, that kind of looks like what's happening here. And so he nicknamed his hood Gaza. And so then Drake raps with Popsicle in Gaza, no, not that Gaza, but still it's Maza. I think Drake is he's acknowledging our existence, you know what I mean? Which is exactly what a lot of people don't want.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, I don't know if
Done.
you remember when he did SNL, like, I don't know, a long time ago, like probably one of the first times he did SNL. There was a bunch of Israel references in that.
Oh wow, no, I don't
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
this.
yeah. Like there was a bunch, and you chalk it up to it being SNL. You know what I mean? Like it is, and
Right.
mainstream media, especially back then. This was, I think, at least like 10 years ago. I think I remember seeing it in like college. You know, like going, damn, I
Right.
love you, Drake. I know you're
Yeah.
Jewish, but this
Yeah.
doesn't equate with Judaism. You know.
Right. Right.
But like, so to see that kind of transformation is
Right.
pretty cool too. I'll definitely have to like look up that episode and send it to you. I
Please.
don't know if it was as blatant as I remember it, but who knows? We're Palestinians, so the minute we see something like that, it's straight
It's
into
like
our brain.
burn into your
Yeah,
brain. Yes.
yeah. Every time I listen to Drake all the time, but every time I listen
Right.
to it, I think about that in the back of my head, and I go, it's okay. He was learning.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
it's all his character progression. That's what we're
Exactly.
witnessing.
No,
You
no,
know what I mean?
exactly. The but you did more than just the Coldplay interview, and more than just the letter from the editor. You also were able to do a really cool story, kind of a remembrance of a Palestinian producer that passed away, and come to find out from you that he's done work for like Kendrick and other big name artists out there. How'd you stumble upon this story, and can you talk a little bit about Zayn Musa?
Sure. Yeah. Zayn Musa. The way this happened was through my interview with. It was a bit similar to the Gibi story, which is that I interviewed Thundercat, the musician Thundercat, who I love.
But
Eh,
not to interrupt you, but you interviewed
yeah.
him on your nostalgia mixtapes, which everybody
Right.
should definitely check out. There's a bunch of amazing content. Hannibal Burris, that's probably
Right.
my favorite interview you did.
Chicago. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, between him and the Bun B interview, I don't know, but those two. Are But continue. But also, the Thundercat interview was really good too, actually. But go on.
Thank you. He so and that one, the Thundercat, it got really deep and like really we had some laughs in it, but it also got really personal. And he told me about this friend of his named Zayn Musa, who had taken his own life about 5 years ago now in 2015. And it was a similar thing where I was like, in the back of my head for months and months, I was like, that name sounds sounds Arabic, like could be
Yeah.
Palestinian, not sure. Um, so I reached out to him and I was like, "Do you know if Zayn was Palestinian?" And he was like, "I'm not sure, but talk to." He put me in touch with his keyboard player, Dennis. And so Dennis, like right away, was like, "Yes, Zayn was Palestinian, and his family was, very proud." And part of it was finding out that, which Thundercat had mentioned in his episode, was that Zayn was supposed to be on Kendrick's album To Pimp a Butterfly, but unfortunately he passed before. Basically, what I found out, the story is, I talked to Dennis. Dennis was like, "Oh, you really need to talk to Terrace Martin." And Terrace is the one who's produced for Kendrick and Snoop and all these people.
Oh, Zayn's not a producer. Zayn is
he just plays saxophone.
plays saxophone.
And
Sorry,
I think
sorry for that mix-up.
like that. All good, all good.
No, I was just looking at the our subhead and it said, but you know.
So I'm talking to Terrace, and he's basically telling me the story of, like, you know, they're working on it's Pimp a Butterfly is basically a jazz album with Kendrick rapping over like jazz music. That's essentially what that album is.
Right.
There's a bunch of really, really talented jazz musicians from the LA scene who play on it, and they all are part of like this big like jazz ensemble called the West Coast Get Down. I used to go see the West Coast Get Down play for free twice a week in Hollywood back in like 2014. And I found out apparently I had seen Zayn play a few times. I just didn't know I was watching Palestine play.
Man,
but Terrace was basically saying that they wanted to include Zayn in the recording process because he was like there in the eyes of all the jazz musicians who played on Kendrick's album. Zayn was like the god. He was the god of the saxophone. No one could play as good as him. And they knew that he was on tour at the time, so they, you know, had been planning, hey, when Zayn gets back from tour, we're gonna bring him into the studio, have him play on some of these Kendrick songs. And you know, sadly, unfortunately, he didn't make it home. And I was just kind of thinking about, like, you know, how amazing it would have been to say like, oh, Kendrick is rapping over some Palestinian music, you know?
Yeah, no, it would have been. And just hearing the way that people described his playing, you know, it's a shame that he's not with us anymore, and it's definitely sad. Definitely sad.
Very, very sad. But I think it's important that y'all exist, that PIA exists, so that we can honor these people. You know.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the same way. I mean, we wish Gibi was still with us so we can talk directly to him. But thankfully, his sister is still alive to tell us, you know, and his friends too. So like, that's why I really appreciate you joining the team for this issue and finding these stories, because honestly, I couldn't even imagine ever stumbling upon these things, and and for you, most of these things are just like by happen chance, but you were in the right place at the right time, because you, just like Gibi and other Palestinians, are, you know, you put yourself in that position to be where you're at, you know. And we didn't really touch on this in the beginning part of this episode, but definitely, like I said earlier, I want to give you your flowers for everything that you do. People that don't know, who are seeing you for the first time, you write for Complex, you have your own podcast, you've done much more, and you're much more than just a journalist, but on the surface level, you're a Palestinian journalist, and you're probably the best out there right now, in my humble opinion. Because literally, like, everything that you found for this issue was because of good journalism. Like, good journalists, they stick their nose where they're supposed to be, and sometimes there's nothing there, you know. Sometimes we smell something, but there's nothing there. But sometimes there's a fire, and you found a lot of fires because this issue is fire.
Yes.
So after this episode, hopefully we'll drop more episodes of this podcast from this issue. I mean, one of the things that I think that we forgot to talk about, which we'll talk about now since we're talking about the next couple episodes, is another thing you stumbled upon. I think this is the last one that if I didn't forget anything else, was the Black Lives Matter car and the Free Palestine car. And, you know, maybe when I edit this podcast, I'll throw up a picture of the tweets and so people can see it. But talk a little bit about, because we've been seeing them. Anybody who's listening to this interview has seen the tweet with the green car with the Free Palestine on the side, right?
Yeah.
And then when those protests were going on earlier this year, after all of the more police shootings that we're starting to see all the time on our screens, the protests, we saw a Black Lives Matter car, right? So can you tell the story a little bit better than I am so far?
Sure. Yeah. This was like another you're right. The way all these things happen is crazy. I tweet. I'm on Twitter a lot. I don't tweet as much as I once did, but I think because I engage with it so much, I'm like, it would be nice to have like a couple viral tweets to my name, like looking back 20 years from now or something. Um, and this was my first one, which basically was a picture that I have been tagged in many times on Facebook of this big green car with these giant rims, and on the side of it, it just like in military font says "Free Palestine." It's just like this really loud car, a car that announces itself,
Yep.
And I've just always loved that car. Never knew anything about it. A lot of my Palestinian friends felt the same. It was just a picture that we saw on the internet. It would pop up every so often, and we were like, "Damn, that's a great car. It's very Palestinian." So when again we had these flurries of police shootings, someone posted online. I'm from Houston. In Houston, we have like a very specific car culture called slabs. Slabs, like the emphasis is on the rims and then the trunk. And in the trunk of your car, you have to put some kind of message in neon lights. That's like the thing. And there's been many iconic ones, but as this kind of was bubbling up, these police shootings, I saw someone post a picture of a slab with the neon that said Black Lives Matter. And I was like, I had the same feeling as when I saw the Free Palestine car. I was like, this is loud, this is in your face, this is like, you know what I mean? This is a great way to like subvert a culture. And so I took both of those pictures, I put them in a tweet, and I made the tweet say, the two horsemen of the revolution, and tweeted it out. And I was like, if I get like 10 retweets, I'll feel like I did something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it has like over 40,000 likes, over 10,000 retweets. And someone tweeted me like that, saying like the Black Lives Matter car was their friend's car. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, what's their handle? Like, can I credit them? Whatever. So they gave me their tag. So I tweeted them and put them on Instagram, whatever. And then I was like, I wonder if I could just like try and find, after I took this guest editor role, I was like, I wonder if I could just like try and find whoever owns the Free Palestine car. And so I did a lot of Googling, a lot of, I guess, as you would say, like journalistic practices, and somehow found an Instagram account with the car. I DM'd them. They're based in Canada, and I was like, is this your car? And they're like, yes, this is my car. I was like, great, amazing. Are you Palestinian? They're like, yes, I'm Palestinian. I was like, even better.
Wow.
And I was like, is there any way I could get you to talk on Zoom with the guy that has the Black Lives Matter car? And again, this was a risk because could have been, unfortunately, like some Palestinian person who might be like racist or something. You know what I mean?
No, honestly, no. There's definitely racism in our community. We're not going to deny that.
Right.
So it could have backfired, but
it could have backfired. But it turns out, as you'll see when you listen to the conversation or read it, both of these guys who own these like custom cars are very down for each other's causes, and kind of it makes me feel like the like kind of like unspoken ethos of this music issue is solidarity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of it throughout the issue. A lot of it is unspoken, but a lot of it is spoken.
Yeah, definitely. We have some honorable mentions, other stories that you edited that were not written by you, about Atlanta-based rapper Faye. I remember when we first reached out to him to be in the issue, he declined the interview because of everything that was going on and said, hey, I don't feel comfortable talking about myself while all this is going on. He reached back out to us when things kind of, I wouldn't say anything really settled down, but there's only so long you can go without living your life. And even in the interview, he made sure to talk about that. He made sure to talk about solidarity for Black Lives Matter and other causes that he believes in. So, and you know what I mean? And in that article, the last paragraph, we talk about his new music, so.
Right.
So
yeah, I think it was handled very well, if I can say so myself.
Yeah. Oh, of course, as an editor, great job.
But definitely kudos to Faye for that's integrity right there for
Yeah.
sure.
And then we have a pretty dope Q&A with Mama Yaya. She's a pop singer based out of Chicago, where I'm from, and she made it to American Idol. I don't remember how far she made it on there, but she got a Palestinian, was on American Idol.
Again, which is huge for us.
Which is huge for us. And the cool thing about Mama Yaya is she's half Jewish. And so like another piece of solidarity with our, like Jewish brothers and sisters. So like it's just the whole issue. And then we did a bunch of, we do this in all of our Palestine and America issues, but Palestinians you should know, and obviously for this issue, music-wise, where we, I knocked out a couple interviews, you got a bunch of interviews for us, like 12, which is amazing. Unfortunately, we can't fit the entire Q&As for each and every individual in the issue, but they will be shouted out with, a picture, and you can check out their full interview at PalestineAmerica.com. Obviously, we'll be publishing those there. Another story I almost forgot, because there's just so much great content in our issue, is our back cover, Clarissa, I believe her last name is Batar.
Yep.
And she plays the oud, and I've been following her for a while, but you know her much better than I do, and that's definitely another Q&A that full Q&A will be published in our issue. But she's our back cover, so it's a really something else they should check out, right? So, is there anything that stood out from that Q&A for you?
I think the important thing with Clarissa, like what she's doing is, I think like visually in terms of the back cover, it's cool that we have two covers, right? One is of an artist who plays a classical Arab instrument, right? The oud. And on the flip side, you have someone who was the lead singer.
Oh no, you're cutting out.
Of hardcore punk, really like our musicians are, and even within Clarissa's music career, she kind of shows that too, where she plays like very traditional style, but then she also collaborates with R&B singers and rappers, and she's very very versatile. So and she plays like very incredibly well. So I think something I can definitely say about what we did with this issue is that we really covered the full spectrum of what like Palestinian musicians have to offer the world, and it definitely would not be complete without including Clarissa.
1,000%. I agree 1,000%. And one thing I just want to mention, because like we did cover the full spectrum, and there's definitely going to be people that we left out of the issue, because space, time, impossible to include everybody. But that's the great thing about having this music issue annually, is because, maybe next year you'll be in the issue. So, so want to make sure to anybody who is grinding in the music, industry or anything like that, and you're Palestinian and you feel like you were left out, you weren't left out. We just haven't gotten to it yet, and we will.
It's coming.
Cool. Exactly.
Yeah.
So before we end this first episode, tell people where they can check out other things that you have done, your other articles, your podcast, all that stuff. Please give yourself.
Sure. Because I've done so many different kinds of work, from writing to video stuff, music and all this, the best way, if you really want to like dig deep into all the different things I've done, is to go to my personal website, which is semantics.com, which is SMNTCS. And then if you just want to jump right into my podcast, that is thenostalgiamixtape.com. And if you want to follow me online, my Instagram is SAM3, number 3, AN, Samahan. I tried to get the same thing on my Twitter, but some guy, I think in like Malaysia, has it and won't respond to my DMs. So, and he's not even tweeting that much. He's not even he don't have any viral tweets. So my Twitter is my full name. It's Saman Ashrawi, SAMAAN ASHRAWI. So,
perfect. So next episodes that people could check out are going to be hopefully that Black Lives Matter card and the Free Palestine card conversation, or one of our conversations with one of the Palestinians you should know, for example, Zach Matari or Amira Jazira. So stay tuned and look out for that stuff from us. Again, You guys have been listening to the Palestine America podcast with me, Nader Ihmoud, and my homie, Ashrawi. My dude.
My name is Ashrawi, and you're listening to the Palestine in America podcast. Let's go.